Okay. So, very good afternoon and welcome to all of you to this special series of programs which are organized by the High Court of Jammu and Kashmir. I'm facilitating this program on behalf of Jammu and Kashmir High Court. It's all because of the efforts of Honorable the Chief Justice that we are having this series of program, and it is the brainchild of Honorable the Chief Justice first. So we have with today Honorable the Chief Justice. Welcome, ma'am. And we have Honorable Judges of the High Court, Honorable Mr. Justice Vinod Chatterjee Cole, Honorable Mr. Justice Sidhu Sharma, Honorable Mr. Justice Puneet Gupta.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Namaskar to
Yes, and we have with us today resource persons for today's program, which is in two parts. One program we are holding today and one program we'll be having on Monday. We are joined by Mr. Kartick Satyanarayan, who is the co-founder SOS, an organization which is working in the field of conservation of wildlife, protection of wildlife. If I start reading his profile, it will take me at least 1 hour. So to skip that, I have already forwarded the profile of Mr. Kartick Satyanarayan to all the participants. And even I have forwarded the link to the website hosted by Wildlife SOS organization. So all the participants must have visited, and activities kind of field the organization is occupying and the kind of activities they are doing, it's marvelous. So to start with today's program, I would request Honorable the Chief Justice, Ms. Justice Geeta Mittal, to address the audience. In audience today, we have law interns, and some of the judicial officers also have joined. Trainee judicial officers have been asked to join, and all the trainee officers have joined. Yes, ma'am, please say a few words in start of this series of program.
Very, very good afternoon to everybody who's joined this program. It's very heartening for me to see the response we are receiving, and I hope the response will improve as we get into the second session with Kartick and the other sessions that we have organized. We are looking at some confirmations of speakers, but even before we get the confirmation, I will request you, Rajiv, to post the different topics on which we have finalized, not only finalized, but what we are proposing to take the interns through. You would also share this link with our law researchers, Rajiv, and request as many judicial officers, share it with all the judicial officers. Whoever wants to join may join. We have the space. I think you have no problem on this profile. But Kartick, as I say to every person who helps us with any any program that we do, that you will never get this opportunity to literally address the head of the nation. We have people, judges and students from Ladakh also hearing you and joining you on this program. And for all of us, I think we are exploring virgin territory. I have a little knowledge and a little experience I would like to share with my sister and brother judges and our friends who are on the panel as to what my interlude with wildlife was. Way back in 1974, I had occasion to represent India at an ecology event in the US. And it was today I feel a changing experience for me, changed my whole life. It's a long story, but we addressed air, water, animals, earth, and from and plants from every perspective possible. We visited the Congo Atomic Research Plant. We visited field trips included sessions with Jacques Cousteau, very famous explorer, and all kinds of things with nature. And it was a mind-opening statement. I was only 14 and a half then. And ever since then, I have been hooked to anything to do with nature and ecology, in all its manifestations. But a few words on where I met Kartick. I was sitting on the division bench in the Delhi High Court when we got a public interest litigation, same as what is before me in Jammu High Court, in the Jammu wing of the High Court, with regard to the monkey menace. Monkeys, there are more monkeys in Lutyens, Delhi than there are people. You name it, the Sena Bhavan, the Shastri Bhavan, all the seats of government power are flooded with monkeys. And this public interest litigation wanted the court to get into the area of controlling the monkey menace. And I learned so much that I was stunned to hear that there was something called wildlife SOS. We all know about SOS, but wildlife SOS came as such a beautiful surprise to me. And that is where I was told about the expertise which wildlife SOS has in managing any difficulty which animals are facing, or the difficulties in their interface with the human habitation or in urban spaces. And that's where we had requested Kartick to come. He came all the way from Agra. He appeared in court 2 times, and I got a chance. But before we could arrive at any meaningful solution to the problem, I came away to Jammu and Kashmir. My second interaction with the difficulties which animals face and the need for sensitivity is when I represented the Indian Circus Federation in courts. They were faced with prosecutions under the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, and also for different issues under the Wildlife Protection Act, where under issues of conservation, then, protected species of animals, and all other such like areas are required to be addressed. The government of India, led by the then Minister, Srimati Maneka Gandhi, had imposed a total prohibition on the use of 4 animals as performing animals, which in 5 animals, in fact, to begin with. It included monkeys and dogs, who we commonly train for various performing tricks, but even they were prohibited. And we had challenged on behalf of the Indian Circus Federation this prohibition in the Supreme Court, in the High Court of India, and then later in the Supreme Court, of course, unsuccessfully. But the issues regarding rescue of animals, their carriage in cramped spaces, the manner in which poultry is to be kept in safe and comfortable facilities, even when it is awaiting execution for the purposes of human consumption, the manner in which different animals have to be cared for, were several areas which I learnt about, and including the regulation under the rules. But I certainly realized that this is a totally complex area, and not so complex, but extremely interesting also from the perspective of both judges and students. Judges, because we are required to work the several prohibitions and the several procedures under the Act. All prosecutions will go before magistrates. And students, and for all mankind, this entire area, because we have to learn to coexist with animals and respect their rights. Wildlife, Kartick will tell you what is the difference between wildlife, animals, what are domesticated animals, the difference between genus, species, etc., and also take you through the different legislations. But I'm sure, Kartick, that you'll make this anecdotal so that the interest of your audience remains riveted. But what Kartick is going to bring with to you is not only a complete wealth of knowledge and information, but of the maximum experience that anyone possesses in our country. So I will close here, and it is over to you, Rajiv, for starting the presentation by Kartick.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Your address has set the programs which we'll have for the interns. Just I forgot to mention that we are having Ms. Shirina Sahni also on the panel. She is associate with Kartick Satyanarayan sir, and I'll then hand over to Shirina
Just
for further moderating. Yes,
one
ma'am.
moment
Yes, ma'am.
before Shreena takes over. I'd just like to tell the interns that what we have proposed, seeing the apprehensions that and interest that all of you expressed in our brief interaction the other day, we have proposed a series of interactions with experts in different niche areas of law. For instance, we'll be doing workshops on a career in corporate practice, career in arbitration, career in constitutional law, career in criminal law. We are bringing you the experts from expert legal practitioners who will be talking to you. A career in the judiciary also. We have arranged for a judge from the Delhi Higher Judicial Service who was earlier a law professor, whose son is also an intern with us now. And we have also brought in a judge, who was a very promising judge. I tried to persuade him not to resign when he was resigning, but he resigned and has gone into and has turned out to be a tremendous lawyer, as good if not better lawyer as he was a judge. But they'll share their experiences and help you. We will have our new judges, interacting with these two judges, and they will share their experiences as to how you can prepare for the judicial exams and also what the experiences of the judiciary are. We have arranged in the corporate law session, we are trying to see if we can get somebody from Amarchand Mangaldas Shroff, and we've got Pratibha Jain of Nishit Desai, and we've got Sai Krishna, who will talk to you about the intellectual law practice in conversation with another senior lawyer. So it's a series that we'll be putting out apart from the sports law and other niche, core legal subjects. Now you may carry on, Rajiv.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. Ma'am, already the programs which we'll be having in this series of programs. Already the list has been put out on the website of High Court and Judicial Academy.
All right.
So they would be getting to know what the programs which we are having, and list of some of the resource persons also has been shared, and their CV is also being shared.
All right.
So in due course, they would get to know that when we are having these programs.
All right.
So thank you very much, ma'am. And now I would request Mr. Kartick, Satyanarayan and Shirina to please continue. And the way you want to proceed, it is up to you, sir. Please.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start by, first of all, thanking you and for this wonderful opportunity. I'm really honored and very grateful as Madam Geeta Mittalji very kindly, Chief Justice, mentioned that this is a great opportunity to address people who are at the highest level of the judiciary. I think this is a very, very wonderful opportunity for me to present information that I have gathered over the last 30 years of my life on the ground, working, shoulder to shoulder with field activists and conservation people. So I'm going to start by making it very anecdotal, as Madam is very rightly requested. I'm going to walk everybody through a very brief presentation of what wildlife SOS is, what have been some of the big wildlife issues in India and how we're addressing them. And then I will also touch upon some of the aspects and the challenges of that. I hope by the end of it, it would have, catalyzed everybody into thinking of questions. And I would love to invite questions from the interns, from all the attendees. And if for any reason, Shirina will be noting down any questions that people put onto the Q&A or the chat, we will note it down. She will also put in relevant resource material as I speak onto the chat box, so people have access to that information right away. And then once the presentation is over, we can open it up for questions. And if any questions are, due to paucity of time, we're not able to take them, then we will make sure we note them and then make sure that on Monday, we address all of those questions without fail. Is that a good way to go forward?
Yes, certainly, Kartick. Please
Yes.
go
Thank
ahead.
you. I will
And,
now.
and,
Sorry.
and a little special attention to J&K. Tell the people a little more about Jammu and Kashmir.
Well, now that you've told me this, I'm going to add a little bit more for the about the J&K project as well, and the challenges over there, and the situation specifically related to J&K in the Monday presentation. This one was a larger overview because I wasn't sure if I could do that. But I haven't put in any photos about the J&K project specifically in here, but I can make some anecdotal references to it. Will that be okay for now? I hope you can join us on Monday also.
Definitely.
It would be a
Yes,
pleasure to have you on Monday as well.
definitely.
Thank you. Thank you. I will start by opening the presentation and going ahead with that. Can you all see the presentation?
Yes, sir, it is there on screen and we can see it very clearly.
Excellent. So again, like I said, my name is Kartick Satyanarayan. I'm the co-founder and CEO of this organization called Wildlife SOS, which I established in 1995 with a co-founder and a colleague called Geeta Seshamani. Geeta Seshamani ji retired from Delhi University as an English professor. And our focus has been to try and work with local wild species across India. And as the Chief Justice very rightly pointed out, there is a marked difference between domestic animals and wild animals. Domestic animals are primarily goats, sheep, dogs, horses, camels, animals that have been used from time immemorial but have been domesticated over centuries and today live as companions of human beings and are used by human beings for various resources. And wild animals are animals such as bears, leopards, tigers, elephants, etc., and including birds and reptiles, snakes, monitor lizards, tortoises, all of those that do not need human beings but play a very important, inescapable ecological role in keeping our forests alive. Every single wild animal plays a very important role to make sure that human beings have water to drink, air to breathe, and a reasonable temperature so we don't get cooked to death, in terms of global warming. And these animals play a very, very key role to keep the forests going. So I'm going to start.
Sorry. Before we move on, can you please switch on the slideshow? Because right now it's in presenter view. So we can
I have put it on slideshow. Okay.
on full screen if you can do that.
Is that better?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
sorry. All right. So moving on, I'm going to also start by telling you briefly why our logo. You must be wondering why the Wildlife SOS logo is just a bear. Now, this is the sloth bear. It is only found in the Indian subcontinent. We have a subspecies in Sri Lanka, but it's not found anywhere else in the world. There are 8 species of bears in the world, out of which, there are 4 species found in India. Jammu Kashmir is fortunate to be home to the brown bear. We call it the Himalayan brown bear, but the same species, as it goes towards Europe, becomes the European brown bear. And then when it goes to America, it's referred to as the grizzly bear in America. But Jammu and Kashmir, where all of you are, is home to a very unique habitat up in the higher slopes where you have the Himalayan brown bear. This bear is called the sloth bear, and it's found across India. It's the commonest bear, but also a very small bear compared to the brown bear, but is very, very important for our conservation. So I'm going to use this as an anecdotal example to show you the issues related to wildlife and on the ground. So in 1995, when my colleague and co-founder Geeta Seshamani and I started Wildlife SOS, this was one of the big things that faced us. What we noticed was that across India, in about 13 states, we could see sloth bears, which were being used on the streets by this community, local community called Kalandars. So we were very intrigued. How is this possible? We were also aware that in 1972, India had started its entire wildlife protection program. So the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 technically banned the use, the possession, the capture, and exploitation of animals like tigers, bears, leopards, elephants, etc. So bears were certainly enlisted in that. But as we started a 2-year research project, we found out very quickly that this species of sloth bears had been used from time immemorial, almost for 400 years, as an entertainment for kings. And this community, called the Qalandar community, had entered India via Persia to entertain primarily the harem of the Mughal emperors and the Mughal emperors as well. So what started off as an entertainment for kings and emperors had kind of become a very cheap roadside entertainment for villagers, local tourists, etc. A lot of foreign tourists would also come see this and be quite horrified, and then go away and then write complaints to the Ministry of Environment and Forests and Government of India, saying, how can the country of Mahatma Gandhi be treating wild animals in this manner? Because it was a shocking sight. So we started digging deeper to find out what was going on. And what we found out was quite surprising. We saw that the intelligence we gathered, and we had to go undercover, we went in as decoys, we gathered intelligence from this community, worked with them, gained their trust, and we found out that every single bear that was performing on the streets was taken from the forest, from the wild. It was poached, and the mother bear was killed so that she would not kill the person trying to poach the bear cub. And then once the baby bears the size of a puppy would be removed, then they would use a metal rod and bash the teeth out, and then use a red hot iron poker to put a hole through the muzzle in order for the bear to be controllable. Because at the end of the day, these are wild animals, and wild animals have a very strong wild instinct and will not be tamed or domesticated easily. So as the bears started, we started working with the community, and eventually, I think I got some slides moved up. Sorry, I need to address this. So this is what happens to the bears. You can see the image on the left is a bear that is used for performances. You see the muzzle wrapped around the mouth. You see the scars, the Y-shaped scar. That's where the rope goes through, and then it goes over the eye and then over the head. Now, these are the kind of damage that the teeth would have. The image on the right is the mouth. Once it's had all the teeth bashed out, the abscesses, the decaying, decomposing teeth, you can see that. And the left side is the root canal surgery that we eventually had to do to address those health issues. But how did we address this issue? That was something, as the Honorable Chief Justice very briefly mentioned. People like Maneka Gandhi, who was then the minister, insisted that these people be punished, and these people and the bears be taken away from them. But wildlife festivals did not want to take a hard line like that. We wanted to find a middle path by which we could make a sustainable difference to this whole move of exploitation of wild animals in an unsustainable manner. So what we did was we documented every single man who had a bear and made sure we marked it, spoke with them, won their trust, won their confidence. It took us 17 years to do this. And then we gave them alternative livelihood options. We found seed funding, we took loans from banks, and we were able to get them. So you can see Amin over here, who surrendered his bear to the forest department. The forest department would then, agreed to not take action on him because he voluntarily came, and they did have some documentation, ownership certificates and things like that. And then we were able to help them with getting an alternative form of livelihood. So Amin now was using an auto rickshaw. He was earning 6 times more than what a bear was going to earn him through the months. And he was going to be, he did not need to be nomadic any longer, but he could stay in one place, make sure his children went to school, looked after his family. The other key thing we found was the women. It was a very patriarchal community. So the women were not getting any opportunity to learn any skills. They couldn't become, second income earners. There were also issues like other social evils in the community, like child marriage and a huge amount of illiteracy. None of the children were sent to school because they would go out to learn how to dance a bear and, put a rope through the hole of the bear's muzzle and things like that. So we started working with the women, empowered them. We taught them skills like embroidery, carpet weaving, tailoring, and things like that. And that was something that really gave us a huge benefit with the community, because the community started seeing a benefit. So this shows how interwoven wildlife conservation is with communities. So we've got to understand that that very deep insight within them. We also sent over 7,600 children to school and rehabilitated about 3,000 families in order to make sure that we could bring this whole practice of dancing bears across India, because there were about 1,200 dancing bears across India. And eventually, by the time, it took us 17 years, we rescued the bears through the forest department. We were able to get 628 bears off the forest department. But we were able to address issues like child marriage, illiteracy, women empowerment. And then in just about a year ago, in 2019, we celebrated a 10-year anniversary of not having any more dancing bears across India. So this was a process that took us from 1995 to 2009, and we were able to bring an end to this practice across the country. And we were able to get every family into an alternative livelihood scheme. Every bear was handed over to the forest department, and we've been able to bring an end to this. However, this means that this species can be saved now in India. Bears are called farmers of the forest because they dig a lot. They also eat berries, fruits, etc. But then when they defecate, they dig holes and they defecate. So those seeds are then packed with nutrients. And that's how the forest keeps growing. So that's why they're called farmers of the forest. So bears, these are sloth bears. In Jammu and Kashmir, the species that you all have there are the Asiatic black bears. Again, a very incredible species of bear. But they perform the same role in Jammu and Kashmir, keeping the forests alive, cleaning up things. They also scavenge on, on things around there. So they play a very important ecological role. What we had achieved by collaborating with the state forest departments, the government of India and the state governments, was that we not only had brought an end to a practice that had gone on for 400 years, and we thought it would take us 50 years to resolve this problem because it was very controversial. It involved a community, it involved livelihoods, it involved the law, etc. But we were able to also restore dignity because a lot of foreign visitors were complaining about the way India was portraying itself. And 628 bears were rescued and are now housed in 4 different rehabilitation centers across India. We have the biggest one, which is in Agra, the Agra Bear Rescue Facility, again about 2.5 hours from Delhi. The second one is in Bangalore. The third one is in Bhopal in Madhya Pradesh, and the fourth one is in West Bengal. Excuse me. We used 4 different centers so that we could geographically and logistically collect those animals and work with the forest department in those regions to address this issue. Excuse me. We also were able to address alternative livelihood for the communities, women empowerment, community upliftment. And one thing that makes me really proud today is that 40% of the staff that work with Wildlife SOS today with rehabilitation of wildlife, rescuing, interventions, etc., are from these communities, and they work with us, and we're very proud of that fact. However, again, I must say that said, that does not solve our problem because wildlife conservation is still at risk. So this photo that you see on the left side is a sloth bear. Again, it's an endangered bear, receives the highest level of protection under the Wildlife Protection Act of India, but yet it is trapped in a snare which is created by using motorcycle cables, accelerator and clutch cables, as you can see. And the Wildlife SOS team very often is called by the forest department or the police to go and address this. And then we have to go there, tranquilize the bear, remove it, extricate it, and then remove the snares. And you can see the photo on the right shows you how badly the damage is, on that right leg, and it had to be amputated. So such bears can't be released back in the wild. They end up having to live all their lives in a lifetime care center. So the ecological value of that animal is lost, but also, very often these kind of crimes or wildlife offenses go undetected because the animal can't complain and it sometimes just strangulates and dies in such situations. So this is where a lot of veterinary intervention, as the Honorable Chief Justice mentioned, wildlife SOS has to go and intervene. And here you can see the photo of one of our operating rooms where our team of veterinary doctors is actually working on that bear that we had rescued to try and fix the leg. And the situation sometimes can get quite complicated and you have to play with a lot of factors when you do that. Now, this is a very interesting image. I'm not sure how many of you recognize this. This is a tool, a contraption that can kill a tiger. It's called a jaw trap. It's made with discarded automobile spare parts and costs about 300 to 500 rupees to make. But it can trap a tiger. It's called a jaw trap or a katka or a kudka. And once the tiger is trapped, there are communities in India that only use this, use their skills. They have fieldcraft skills, but they use it to hunt big cats like tigers, leopards, etc. And then, of course, this is where the whole trafficking chain opens up. Illegal trafficking of wildlife is a multi-billion-dollar industry, unfortunately. And the bones and the skin of this tiger will be harvested in less than 40 minutes. Once this animal is captured, the community will come, they will kill it, and then those bones and skin and all of the blood and all the body parts of it will disappear very soon and take a route. And there are multiple routes around India that they take, and they will reach China or other Southeast Asian countries where these body parts of animals like this are used in delicacies and all kinds of medicinal preparations. It's called traditional Chinese medicine. Again, when such animals are trapped, in case they are detected by the forest department or a patrol party, then these animals can be brought in for treatment. And again, here is our team providing treatment to a tiger that was rescued. But in this particular case, we were not able to put this animal back in the wild because, as you can see, it lost a big portion of its leg. So again, the animal's ecological value was lost, but he ends up living in captivity for the rest of his life. Again, these are very rare species. The photo on the left is an Indian pangolin or a scaly anteater, which is again poached for illegal wildlife trafficking. The right side image is a horned owl. Again, these are species that are very rare, but India is rich in the wealth of wildlife, and which is why, unfortunately, we are victims of this crime. Again, elephants, same situation, sadly. Elephants are something that people worship in India. We call it a Ganesha, we worship it. But unfortunately, there are poaching gangs that will go after elephants to harvest ivory, other body parts like legs, teeth, tail, hair, and things like that. That does occur. One of the ways that our team uses to reach such situations is mobile units that are donated to us by various people and donors. That's how we reach these locations and get our doctors to go and help them. Here's a small video I'd like to share. I hope the video plays. It's about this was a leopard cub, a subadult leopard that was found by the Maharashtra Forest Department that was injured on the freeway. And it was paralyzed completely. It was conscious, but it couldn't coordinate its movement. So it required a long amount of laser therapy, a lot of physiotherapy, etc. And basically, it required a lot of persistence for us to constantly do physiotherapy in order to make this animal fit enough to be released. So this goes to just show the amount of effort that's required to fix one animal sometimes, and how easy it is to kill or destroy or maim an animal, but to make the animal recover and put it back in the wild or in its natural habitat is quite a challenge. You can see the amount of effort it took, and you can see how uncoordinated the leopard is. It's not really able to walk, but it took months and months. At the end, Here is the final release video. You can see this animal being released back in the wild, and it was perfectly fine, but then it did take several months. I just wanted to share that anecdote with all of you. Here's another very interesting anecdote. I'm switching from other species like bears and leopards to elephants. But before that, I'd like to very briefly touch upon the subject of your local situation in Jammu and Kashmir, where leopards and black bears come into a lot of conflict with the local residents and the local population. And in the past, I remember what initiated Wildlife SOS to get involved with Jammu and Kashmir and actually set up that bear orphanage was because this was about maybe 20 years ago, 15 or 20 years ago, that a bear entered a village. And unfortunately, people got so panicked. It's usually sometimes because of ignorance, lack of knowledge about that species, and delayed response by the authorities sometimes. But what happened was the local public got so scared, the bear went up a tree and they lit fire to that tree. And the bear just burned to death. And that was a shocking incident for us. So in fact, we have a team there that works with the Forest Department, the Wildlife Protection Department of Jammu and Kashmir, very closely to provide quick response as and when required for such situations. The same situation happens with leopards as well. I think there have been situations where leopards and bears injure people or end up getting injured or kill themselves. And very often we have found that these can be addressed by just knowledge, education, awareness, and just getting people to understand that, okay, if I call this number, then I will get a response within so much time. And that enables people to at least know what to do in a case like that. And here I'm going to talk about the elephant situation in Chhattisgarh. What you can see in this video here is a herd of elephants crossing the road. But this was a herd of about 20 elephants in Chhattisgarh. They moved from Odisha to Chhattisgarh because of a big coal mine. So elephants use, ancestral knowledge, and this knowledge about corridors to move from one part of the forest to another part of the forest is passed on from one generation to another. And that's what these elephants do. So they were using this corridor. Unfortunately, there was a big coal mine in Odisha that prevented them from following the path of the corridor. So they ended up migrating into the nearby state, Chhattisgarh, because for them, they don't have any borders, state borders or boundaries. They just moved there because they found that their normal route was blocked because of this coal mine. And as they came in here, there was mayhem because there was people in Chhattisgarh had never had elephants in their surroundings. So people were getting trampled, property was getting damaged, and it was quite a huge risk for the people as well. That's when the Chhattisgarh Forest Department contacted us. And what we did was the Wildlife SOS team went in there, studied the whole problem with the Forest Department, and eventually we realized that we needed to create a mechanism by which the local people understand that we can be tolerant if we are able to protect ourselves. So we created something called an early warning alert system. And in this image, what you're seeing is a wild elephant that we had to tranquilize. So you use a very calibrated dose of tranquilizer, and our senior veterinary team, Dr. Arun, Dr. Ilyaraja were there, and they darted this elephant. It was a very risky operation. It took weeks and weeks of tracking these elephants on foot and then eventually tranquilizing the elephant. And then we had to achieve standing sedation. So the elephant didn't fall over, but was standing, but still unconscious, and allowing us to put the radio collar on. So we put something called a GPS collar. And you can see we blindfolded the elephant so she doesn't get stimulated by light and other things. We have to stay very quiet around this. It's a very dangerous operation. So once we put the collar, we could then track every single movement of the elephant. You can see the white box on top of the back of the elephant is the GPS collar. And this collar was able to give us hourly updates on what the elephant's movement is. And that is the matriarch of the herd. So in Asian elephants, the matriarch of the herd leads the entire herd. They will all follow where she asks them to go. So we collared her. And the image on the left that you see here is a WhatsApp message with the location. And it also says alerting village Joba, Parasida, and Kukradi. So these are the villages that are getting alerted through that WhatsApp group about the movement of that elephant and the trajectory that the elephant is taking. But before this, we did one other exercise and alerted the local villages about the whole radio collaring process. And we also told them that you need to make groups within your, youngsters from that community created a group. And then we were able to make sure that there was a radio station that alerted them about the movement of the elephants. The WhatsApp group alerted them about the movement of the elephants. And here on our right, you see our awareness coordinator, Pragati. We have a similar program in Jammu and Kashmir as well, where we have a local person, Alia, who goes around communicating such awareness issues to local communities. But here, Pragati would go from village to village and tell them that this is important for you to understand, and also request them to exercise some tolerance in the event elephants came. And also we would teach them avoidance behavior. So when they know that the elephant was 2 kilometers away from their village, they would all come out with their pots and pans in the evening and make a lot of noise. And the elephants would just go away, because elephants are scared of human beings. They don't want to come, or most animals are. Most wild animals want to avoid human beings and give us a very wide berth. Here's an example of conservation in action. This is the Wildlife SOS hotline unit. We run this in Delhi, all the Delhi NCR areas, Ghaziabad, Noida, Gurgaon, Sahibabad, etc. But also we have a similar unit in Gujarat, in Baroda, and we have one in Agra, Mathura region as well. And we receive over 6,000 to 7,000 calls each year about animals that have come into too close proximity with human beings, but also, where people are in distress. Ghar mein saap aa gaya, ji hamare swimming pool mein monitor lizard aa gaya, there's an injured deer outside, please help us. So our team immediately goes. And one thing I'd like to share with all of you is this team makes me very proud, because most of the people on this team are people who are reformed snake charmers, people who worked in the past as snake charmers. And I'll tell you about their background a little bit later, but this is one way of solving a problem, a conservation problem. So I'm going to also move on to the issue of captive elephants. Again, this is very closely connected with wildlife conservation. So what you see here in this image, of course, we all know Ganesha and someone that, a lot of us pray to. But also, please, may I draw your attention to the elephant there, which is blessing the little child. But pay attention to the man sitting on the right side of that elephant, near the foot of the elephant. He has something in his hand called an ankush, or a bull hook, and it has a very sharp talon on the edge. And that is what is controlling the elephant. Because at the end of the day, an elephant is a wild animal. They come from the forest. They are creatures of the deep jungle. They have soft footpads. They need to be inside the forest. And they have a very close bond amongst themselves. They have a social bond without which these elephants don't move. Like I said, the matriarch will be followed by the entire herd. And if there's one baby elephant that's disrupted or has fallen, the whole herd will come together to protect the elephant. But here's a shocking fact. 95% of the wild elephants in India are gone. They don't exist anymore. They're just dead or poached or removed, because India is the last stronghold for wild Asian elephant population. Today we have, about 10 decades ago, that's about a century ago, we had 1 million elephants. Today we have between 25 and 27,000 elephants left in the wild. And that's a huge drop. You can imagine the kind of ecological loss that India has suffered. And this is due to multiple things. Of course, poaching is a component for ivory and other things, but there's also illegal trafficking and poaching of elephant calves from elephant herds, which then, there's a very dark and illicit trade that goes on. In addition to that, we also have other issues where railway lines go through forests, electric lines go through forests, things like that, where the habitat gets disturbed, and causes casualties of elephants. So this is a photo of an elephant calf being captured. I have two videos, very brief videos that I'd like to share with you, and I would urge you to please not look away. It might not be pleasant to watch, but it's the fact. That's what happens. And it would help you know what the reality is of the situation. I'm going to play those videos very quickly. So a lot of people ask me, is there no other way to train an elephant, or is there no other way to capture an elephant? What about elephants that are born in captivity? Unfortunately, the only way to train a wild animal to become a domestic animal and perform things like tricks in circuses or in temples, or to give tourist rides, is to use negative reinforcement. And this, what you see here, the image on the left is a training kraal. This is a common practice in India and all of Southeast Asia, where Asian elephants are captured, and it's called a kraal. In Kerala, they call it a katti process, where basically they tie it up and then beat it till it breaks its spirit, and then the animal becomes usable and will agree to obey the person who's made it captive. Once these elephants are captured and trained through the process that I just showed you, then they can become tourist elephants. They can go through traffic. That's where places such as Amer Fort in Jaipur and other places in Kerala, etc., Goa, and all those places where they use tourists for tourism and tourist rides. This is an image of bull elephants that are used in Kerala at the Trichur Puram festival and other such festivals and processions. You can imagine it's very unnatural for bull elephants, who are packed with testosterone, to stand so close to each other. And the only thing that's preventing them from going amok and rampaging the crowd over here and leaving 20, 30 people injured or killed is the fact that both their feet in the front and the back are hobbled. Somebody standing next to them with a spear, and the man sitting on top is using an ankush or a bull hook down on the back of the neck, to ensure that the elephant knows that it will get fear and pain. Fear and pain are the two tools that are used to train these wild animals. Here's another image of, this is a photo taken by a tourist in Jaipur, where this elephant dropped a tourist from its bag. Obviously, these are wild animals, and you don't have insurance when you're working with these wild animals. And sometimes these animals also get tuberculosis from human beings. So the health factor for a tourist is also very dangerous when you're sitting on top of an elephant, or interacting with it in a negative manner. These are the sophisticated tools that are used to train elephants: spiked shackles, bull hooks, spears, and anklets. So I'm going to try and explain to you another anecdotal opportunity for me to show you what happens when there is an intervention by the government and organizations like Wildlife SOS to rescue a situation where the animal is in distress, or the owner is not able to look after the elephant or something like that. Here's an elephant called Suraj. As you can see, his left ear is completely missing because it got decomposed due to an infection caused by the bullhook. And the owners, who were in a temple in Maharashtra, did not want to look after this elephant any longer because it was difficult for them to handle it. And he lived in this room for 42 years. So our team did an assessment, and after that we had to go in there, work with the local community, but there was some hostility. So the local administration, district administration, of course, there was a court order also in place in order to help move this elephant out. You can see the number of vehicles that escorted this elephant out of that location. It's a huge opportunity sometimes to rescue even one elephant. And it took about 70 vehicles, I think, and you can see the ambulance in the middle. This is the elephant ambulance that we sent to get that elephant out of that situation, and it needed to be escorted out of the district. But once the elephant is inside the ambulance, then you start providing treatment right away. This is one of our vets giving treatment. Of course, no journey for an elephant is complete without making sure that it's comfortable. You give it fruits and vegetables that it likes and keeping it clean throughout the journey. But here's a video of that same elephant that we loaded up, getting off. This is an elephant called Gajraj, getting off the ambulance into the Wildlife SOS Elephant Conservation and Care Center. And you can see that he is surrounded by strangers, but by not exhibiting any kind of hostility or control or trying to show negative reinforcement, you actually evoke a much more positive response. He takes his time getting off because he wants to make sure the soil is firm before he steps off the truck. So this encouraged us to create a hospital for wildlife. And we have India's first and only elephant hospital at the moment in Mathura, which I'd invite all of you to come and visit whenever you have an opportunity. And this is one of our elephants, Gajraj, having a dust bath just outside the hospital. The hospital also provides for a hydrotherapy pool. We call it the world's largest jacuzzi, but it enables the elephants to address a lot of their weak muscles and injuries that needs a massage. And human beings can't really give elephants a massage the way you can give them a strong massage with 21 high-speed jets. So this really helps the elephants recoup from their stress and their injuries. And this is a dust bath that some of our elephants really enjoy partaking in. And it works like talcum powder for human beings. So many people ask me, how does rescuing a captive elephant help all of India's elephants? It does, and this is how. Captive elephants, like I explained, are taken from the wild. Most elephants are owned illegally. For example, just in Jaipur alone, out of the 105 odd elephants that are there, about only 33 of them have legal ownership documents. And the forest department is actually prosecuting the remaining because they've all been procured illegally. Law enforcement is needed to ensure that elephant trafficking and illegal trafficking of elephants does not occur. But a sanctuary or an elephant care center like the one that we have in Mathura allows for laws to be enforced so that the elephants can be confiscated in such cases and brought there. Enforcing laws does work as a deterrent to trafficking of elephants. So here's an example of how Suraj was when he was rescued and how he looks today. This is Bola, another elephant that we rescued who was hit by a truck. On the image on the left is the before photo. The image on the right is the after photo. This is another elephant called Raju. You can see the before and the after photo over here. And this is another elephant called Karma, who is currently with us at our elephant facility. This is another elephant called Mohan. Again, as you can see, his leg was broken. We needed to create a lot of infrastructure to make sure that he was taken care of. It just goes to show the amount of effort, infrastructure, and specialized care that is required for one animal even. The elephant hospital in Mathura has these facilities, and we are working with other state governments to encourage them to also establish similar facilities, and we are helping them through that process so it can be emulated across India. We have a medical hoist, thermal imaging, wireless digital radiology, laser therapy, ultrasound, hydrotherapy, and laboratories that are required to provide care to injured wildlife. Now, the need of the hour, I'm now close to the end. So I'll just touch upon a couple of things, but most of you might already be familiar with what I'm saying, but I'd like to just touch upon it because it's a part of my presentation, and then it will hopefully also give you opportunities to ask any kind of questions that you have. The need of the hour for India at the moment is really to promote wildlife conservation, almost because it's also required for human beings to preserve themselves, for self-preservation and survival. Without wildlife conservation, we will not have forests. And without forests, we will not have air, water, and those natural resources that is needed. Also, the need of the hour is to help government enforcement agencies. This is something that we do as much as we can to prevent illegal wildlife trafficking, which is, again, not just encouraging people to go down the wrong path and not, instead of following legal forms of livelihood, it encourages them to go down the wrong path, but also it's eroding the valuable wildlife wealth of India. And one thing that we are big advocates of is to always, even if people get punished by law and they serve their sentence, but when they come out, if we have a way of supporting their families, helping them with alternative livelihoods, then they never have to go back in that direction again. So that's something that we are big advocates of. So this, again, is something that all of you are probably fully familiar with, but I'll just go through it for the interest of the interns and anyone else who is interested. The Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 is something that I'm a big fan of. It's a special act, but it's a very visionary act. In fact, I've had an opportunity to speak about how well this act was laid out in 1972 at the Lewis and Clark Law School in Oregon. When I had an opportunity, I was invited to come and speak there. And here, the offenses of Schedule 1 and Part 2 of Schedule 2 are actually non-bailable and non-compoundable. But, one thing that has always surprised me is that the current conviction rate across India for wildlife offenses is below 0.01%. And that's one of the reasons that wildlife protection in India or wildlife conservation in India is a challenge, because offenders seem to not be discouraged or deterred by the current level of sentencing. And of course, sentencing always works because it works as a good example. It was very valuable when we worked with the bears. The reason the dancing bear issue was resolved successfully was because when the forest department would, confiscate bears that were, illegally poached from the forest, there was a strong sentencing policy. And because of that, the whole village would say, "Hum nahi karenge isko. We will not try to poach bears if this is what's happening to that one man." And that was very strong. It really helped make a difference. So to enhance deterrence levels, I think it's important that sentencing is towards the higher end of the spectrum. For example, in the Wildlife Protection Act, it's 3 years, not less than 3 years, and up to 7 years. So, but I have not been able to find any sentences where it's gone more than 3.5 or something like that. Also, to just bring you up to speed, this is the current status. I mean, these are just some big ones. We are all used to seeing snake charmers and people with monkeys used for performances, elephants used for riding, etc. And of course, bears, which is now a thing of the past. But these animals as of today, are still being used. Monkeys, snakes, elephants are being used, and even birds sometimes are being used by traffickers, and in a way that is illegal, a violation of the law. Just a very brief fact about snakes. I have a very soft spot for snakes because I feel that they've been left behind from the dinosaur age. They haven't had a chance to evolve. Snakes don't have ears, they can't hear, they don't have limbs, they can't escape, and only 4 species out of the 272 species that we have in India are actually venomous. So when snake charmers, so-called snake charmers, catch these snakes, in the past, historically, snake charmers had the ability to manage snakes without defanging them. Today, that art is gone, unfortunately, and they use cutting pliers and pull out the fangs. They use a knife or a blade and remove the venom gland, which is here. And the venom for a snake, for a venomous snake, is nothing but highly concentrated protein that is used to digest the rodents or frogs that it eats. Snakes are the biggest friends of farmers because about 20% of a farmer's crop is taken away by rodents. And the only biological way of controlling rodents effectively are these snakes. They can go into the rodent burrow, and that's the way the ecological balance has been created. But by interfering and catching these snakes and using them for snake charming, etc., it really disturbs that balance. You can also see the image on the right where a rat snake has a huge mouth infection and inflammation caused by the stitching of the mouth. So it's not only brutal and unacceptable, but it's also very strongly illegal. Once the snakes are too weak to perform, for the snake charmers, they're then nailed to a tree alive, and then a blade is used, and then the entire skin is taken off like a stocking, ripped off completely, and then sold for wallets, purses, for as little as 50 rupees sometimes. Again, baby monkeys are captured, stolen from their mothers so that they can be used for training and keeping other monkeys away. These are langurs, and then they're used for performances, etc. So I've come to the end of this first session because it's already 50 minutes. I'm sorry if I've gone on for too long, but I thought it would give everybody an opportunity to see that there is a wealth of information out there, and I'm more than happy to share anything I have available with us. So we could, of course, take any questions at all now, but also if we have, I think about, we have some time left, but we can also table any unanswered questions that you have that I'm unable to respond now for Monday. But you can also send us questions. If you're not able to ask it now or later, please feel free to email us these questions. We'd be more than happy to respond. I will now stop sharing my screen. Thank you for your time. Share screen kaise band karu?
Sir, thank you very much. I think it was wonderful presentation from you.
Rajiv, I just want to
Yes.
speak one word. Kartick,
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you very
Yes, ma'am.
much.
Please go ahead.
Very sensitizing, and to all of us, many of the people in Jammu and Kashmir may never have seen an elephant, even adults. But what I want to say to you is, if you could address the law a little more. Monday we have speakers speaking to us on forests and forests and environment in 2 different sessions. But if you could deal with the Wildlife Protection Act and the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, which are animal specific, in a little more detail, because you're dealing with law students and judges who will be doing the prosecution. So the layering of what is prohibited, the different schedules under the Wildlife Act, the manner in which the prosecution has to be effected, who can file complaints under both these laws, please.
Certainly, I will address that on Monday.
Please, yeah, if you would open by telling the participants about the hard law issues, But very good. You're doing wonderful work. Thank you. Rajiv.
Thank you. It won't be, I hope this was not too anecdotal. On Monday, it might not be as anecdotal, though.
No, that it's perfect, but they need to know the subject. I'm sure my sister and brother judges also, I see they're still here with us. So they've also enjoyed it. I couldn't go away. I have another webinar starting at 5:30 where I have to speak on another totally diverse subject. I have to read on that, but I couldn't go away.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you so much. That's very encouraging.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead, Rajiv.
Yes, thank you very much, ma'am. We thought that these things happen only in foreign countries because we see on Animal Planet and National Geography, we see all this, but we never realized that this is happening in India also. And thankfully, you have brought it to our notice. And yes, I know that you have featured on National Geographic Channel also and Animal Planet also, and you are featuring in a lot of these ecological environmental magazines also. So this was very, very good presentation from you.
Rajiv,
Not many questions have come.
Have you got questions?
Yes, only 2-3 questions. Probably they have reserved questions for next session. So yes, I'll start with this. This participant, not a question, but is a comment, but can be elucidated upon. Sir, your idea of transforming the exploiters into saviors of wildlife is outstanding. Kudos to you and your team. So connected to this is one question which was asked by, but I think has been answered. The kind of things you are doing with bears and elephants, can these be replicated with all other kind of animals as well?
Rajiv, please give the name of the person asking the question. Identify the question. Who's asked it? Please identify.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. This is Kanak Sharma, who has posted this question privately. And one is from, name is not given, but Cisco WebEx company name is not reflecting there. Please, sir.
Yes, we can certainly, use a similar model, but the challenges for every species and every situation is very varied. Whereas, for example, if we are trying to use the same bear model with elephants, but, elephants are owned not by people who, get bear cubs. For example, the Kalandar community was already a very impoverished community. They were getting bear cubs for maybe 2,000, 5,000 rupees. A big bear would sell for 20,000, 25,000 rupees for them. So by helping them with seed funds of about 50, 60,000 rupees, we were able to help the community and establish them in alternative livelihoods. Whereas if you compare that to elephants, the people who own elephants, even if it's illegally, they have spent 60, 70 lakhs to buy these elephants. So for them, it's like a huge investment. It's like, owning a big piece of machinery, and they want to generate revenue from it almost on a daily basis. So in that situation, it varies slightly because the people who are working with the elephant, like the mahouts or the caretakers, who may only get 5 or 8,000 rupees a month, those are the people whose livelihoods will be more disturbed than anything else. And those people we always offer alternative employment to, because the law enforcement is not our, prerogative. That's out of our jurisdiction. The law enforcement is done by the enforcement agencies. But when we are involved with the rescue operation, we always offer an opportunity to the people who work with these elephants to come and be a part of a reformed life. So the elephant is easier to rehabilitate than the people. The people also reform along with the elephant, and we offer them a place with a respectable wage, medical insurance, food, a place to stay, etc. And that does address their livelihood and wherever possible.
Thank you. Now this next question is from Mr. Mahesh Kumar. He says, what is your take on recent death of an elephant by eating explosive stuffed pineapple? What can be the legal repercussions of the case like this? Because this was highlighted in news and for quite some time. Yes, please.
Very true. I'm glad this was brought up. But I must say, it is truly shocking that in the 21st century, farmers or local people, who see solving. So if they see wild boar entering the fields and eating up their, potatoes or onions or other crops, there is already in place a robust crop compensation program by every state forest department. Every state forest department has several crores available from CAMPA funds for dispersal to the farmers when they apply for crop compensation. And all they have to do is call the range officer, who will come and assess that it was truly done by a wild boar. They have entered from here and the compensation is issued. But some farmers and some miscreants resort to violent forms of addressing such issues, and wherein I don't know how, I'm also surprised how easily available, explosives and dangerous goods are available in some parts of India. These people buy this explosive gunpowder and, the explosive that is used, TNT, for quarries and places like that. They pack it tightly and then put it inside a food article, like a papaya or a coconut or some other fruit, watermelon or something like that. And then they place it at the edge of the field in the hope that the wild boar will come and eat it. Of course, you can imagine what will happen when a wild boar bites into it. It will explode inside the mouth of the animal, not just blowing its head apart, probably putting splinters into its mouth, eyes, skull, everywhere. This is what happened with this particular elephant. The elephant found a piece of fruit left there, and that's at least what the forest department has told us, that this was planted for a wild boar, but an elephant took it. But what if it had been a child? What if it had been a local child who was hungry, was attracted to the fruit and picked it up, and it blew up in her face or the child's face? So yes, we do have laws. We have the Arms Act. We have so many laws that prevent careless handling of explosive material. People who get caught in the airport with one empty bullet or one empty cartridge end up going to jail. But how is this matter, so easily available, this substance? In fact, you'd be also surprised to know that we have had 3 instances in just 1 year where bears that were radio collared, leopards that were radio collared and tracked, all ate something like this found on the edge of a field, and their heads exploded. So not only is this inhuman and cruel, I think it's also quite barbaric and really shocking in today's day and age, where people have sympathy for fellow beings, they have kindness. But why such violence when there is an alternative available that is perfectly humane? So yes, I do. This is my take on it. I know it makes me speak very strongly in favor of that, but I also feel that the only way we can deter something like this from recurring again is by ensuring that the people who are responsible receive some sentencing. That will serve as a deterrent for everybody else. That will also make sure that the shops selling such material will stop selling it if they are also deterred by some kind of sentencing or some kind of penal action that's taken against them. I hope this addresses the question, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. This is a question from the same participant, Mr. Mahesh Kumar. How can we prevent animals from practices which are concerned with the religious beliefs of the people?
So again, whether it is a religious belief, a traditional belief, or if it's for entertainment or anything else, if there is a law in our country and the constitution has set something up, I think it is necessary for everybody to follow that. People have been smoking, for example, as an anecdotal example, I'd like to say that people have been smoking ganja or marijuana, for centuries. It's even considered religious. Most, sadhu mahatmas and these Naga Babas use chillams, and when it's not permitted, it cannot be purchased, traded in, procured, or used. I guess we have to follow the word of the law. So whether it is religion, tradition, very often I find that there are practices that are unethical or illegal that go on under the guise of religion or tradition. So they use tradition sometimes as a veil to cover these practices. But it's up to us to do the right thing. Do we want to allow a violation of the law when it is not prescribed, it is not permitted, just because it's a religious practice? Or is there a way that we can educate them and help them understand that it might be important for them to have a temple with an elephant in it? But if they understood that the elephant was taken away from its family, torn from its herd, then brutalized before it was trained. And then by standing on concrete and hard stone each day, the joints get inflamed and it becomes arthritic. By the age of 15 or 16, most of these elephants are already suffering lameness and arthritis. And then they will continue to live for the next 50 years in that poor quality of life situation. So I don't know if this answers the question. These are very debatable questions, and we can talk for a long time about these issues.
Sir, thank you very much. There have been many questions coming up, but I think these questions can be taken up in the next session. I'll just quickly take the final question. This is from Mr. Siddharth Jasrotia. Kindly share your insight on recent translocation of African cheetah in India, which was permitted by the Supreme Court after almost a 10 years long battle.
I've been following this for some time, but I think the cheetahs have not yet been able to be brought. Although ideally, I think the cheetah, which was in India, the Asiatic cheetah, originally, which we lost about 50 years ago, the last cheetah was shot in India. I think it was in Madhya Pradesh or Haryana or somewhere, but the last cheetah was shot. While it's a very, very wonderful gesture that the Supreme Court has encouraged the translocation of cheetahs and the reintroduction of the species back in India, I think the current challenge is that Iran is the only place where Asiatic cheetahs are found today. And that only about 50 individuals are left. So Iran is refusing to share any cheetahs with India. So I think the attempt is to bring South African cheetahs and try it with that. My only apprehension would be, I pray that this becomes a success, but my only apprehension would be that we are already finding it difficult, for wild animals to have space with such a huge exploding population in India, where people are literally cheek to jowl with animals. We have conflicts with tigers, leopards, bears. I mean, you name an animal and there is conflict with people every day. And I'm just worried about what a new predator will bring into the equation. But it'll be very interesting to watch, and any translocation or relocation, reintroduction effort like this has our complete support.
So thank you very much. There are not less than 20 questions still to be answered, but I am afraid we cannot take more questions since Honorable the Chief Justice has to join another program. She is resource person there. So we'll reserve these questions for our Monday's program. So all these questions I'll take note of and we'll address these questions. So thank you very much for your value on all the regime of wildlife conservation. So building upon that, we'll have another session on Monday. We'll start that session at 4 p.m. and maybe we'll take a longer time if you have more time available with you, so that all these concerns are addressed. So thank you very much. So maybe to part with, honorable judges have joined. If honorable judges could say a few words while parting. May I request Ma'am Sindhu Sharma ji to please say a few words? Ma'am, your audio is off, I think. Not audible, ma'am. Okay. I think there is some issue at ma'am's end. So probably we'll have the privilege of hearing Honorable Ms. Justice Sindhu Sharma in the next program. So I would request ma'am to please spare her address for next program. So with this, we come to the close of our training program. This awareness program for the law interns. We were joined by many judicial officers also and our trainee judicial officers. So we'll have another enlightening session on Monday. So thank you very much. Thank you all the participants. Thank you, Honorable the Chief Justice. Thank you very much, Honorable Judges of the High Court who have joined us. Thank you, Shirina, who is also playing important role in the backdrop. And thank you all and other participant judicial officers. Thank you very much. With this, we'll close this session for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.